That $100 router from the electronics store might look really tempting for your business, but what if I told you it could be the weakest link in your entire operation? Your network is the backbone of your business. Every email, every customer transaction, every file your team shares, it runs across your network. In this video, we're going to be going over the difference between business class network equipment and consumer class network equipment, and why you should generally stay away from consumer class network equipment for your business, with one major exception, but we'll get to that later. Hi, I'm Brad Nelson, the CEO of FRCS Tech, and I help businesses eliminate IT headaches and stay secure. Now, you might be familiar with this device. This is a home Wi-Fi router. This basically takes your internet connection from your ISP, creates a Wi-Fi network for you, and it even provides some ports on the back for plugging in wired devices. This is what most people have in their home. Maybe not this particular model, might look a little bit different, the one that you have in your home. And unfortunately, a lot of businesses also rely on a device like this, but there's some problems with that. This is actually 3 devices in one. It's a router, it's a wireless access point, and it's a network switch. Now that's really convenient for home use and basic use, but it's kind of like this multi-tool. This is a Leatherman, and it has pliers, it has a knife blade, it has a saw, it has a file, it has a screwdriver, and it replaces many tools. However, this won't do as good of a job as using those individual discrete tools on their own. For example, the Phillips head screwdriver on this multi-tool works really well, but not as well as a dedicated Phillips head screwdriver. These home Wi-Fi routers are essentially a networking multi-tool. They work really great for simple deployments like in your house, but they lack a lot of things that you would get from having each one of those 3 devices discrete. That's where we get to the business class networking equipment, where we have each of those same devices that are in this device, but separate. We have our network router, we have our networking switch, and our wireless access point. One of the obvious benefits of having all of these devices separate instead of in an all-in-one package is that you can upgrade and replace parts individually separate from each other. So if you have a wireless access point that dies or is on the fritz, you can replace just the access point without having to deal with replacing the rest of the stuff. Or if you need more wired capacity, you could upgrade to a switch with more capacity or add another networking switch to add capacity. On a device like this, if you have an issue like the one that I brought up before where your wireless access point stops working or isn't working right, you can't just repair or replace the wireless portion of this device. You have to replace the entire device. But that's just the beginning. There's many other reasons why this sort of setup is much better for your business than this sort of setup. These home Wi-Fi routers are designed to be installed in a home where there's a handful of devices connected over Wi-Fi or over a wired connection just to provide them internet and act as a barrier from your inside network to the greater internet. Even with a higher-end home Wi-Fi router, you're going to run into capacity issues. This device can probably handle between 20 and 30 devices connected over Wi-Fi without any sort of slowdown issues because of bandwidth problems. Now, with this particular access point, this particular model, it can handle about twice as many connections as this Wi-Fi router can. The other nice thing of this sort of setup is if you do reach that capacity or you're having problems with bandwidth on your access point, you can just add another access point and it will extend your Wi-Fi capacity and your range. These wireless access points are designed to be installed in strategic locations around your office or your campus, and they all broadcast the same Wi-Fi networks. They also automatically hand off devices from one access point to another depending on signal strength, something you just don't get with a home Wi-Fi router. You can buy Wi-Fi extenders or add another Wi-Fi router to your network. However, they're going to be broadcasting different networks, and depending on your signal strength, if you have one of these in one part of your building and then another one in another part of your building to extend your Wi-Fi range, you're going to have to connect to a different Wi-Fi network in order to get access depending on where you're located in your building. And setting up these consumer-grade Wi-Fi routers in that configuration can be complicated, and if it's done wrong, it can end up causing interference with your Wi-Fi signals, and it can cause subnetting problems with your entire network. Now let's talk about security. That's another area where the business class devices really shine. These home Wi-Fi routers will come with a basic firewall, and some higher end models might come with some DNS filtering, but that's about it. And these home Wi-Fi routers get somewhat infrequent firmware updates. And the firmware updates are usually quality of life updates or security updates, but usually you also don't get notified right away when there's a firmware update. And so you might not know that there's one for your device unless you actually log into the management console for it and look and see if there's an update. Now with the business class routers, you get a lot more security features. You get a more advanced firewall than you would find over here. Usually they will come with some sort of DNS server built in that you can configure and a built-in VPN server. Some business class routers even come with intrusion detection servers built in. And of course, all of these different things can also be separate network devices in addition to your router and your other networking equipment. For example, at FRCS Tech, we have our own DNS server that is a separate server running in our network rack that handles all of our DNS requests. Along with those more advanced security features, you also get more advanced configurability and management. Both of these routers can be configured to be managed over the internet from anywhere. However, the way this router is set up to do that is way more secure. In order to set up remote management on a Wi-Fi router like this, you basically have to turn on remote management and open a port out to the internet to access this router. That comes with all sorts of security risks. With this device, it connects to a cloud server that then you log into through multi-factor authentication or with a passkey, and then you can access the management from anywhere. This is a much more secure way of managing your devices from afar. And another thing that you really need to consider configuring for your business network that you can do with this, but not this, is VLANs. VLAN is short for Virtual Local Area Network, and you should have multiple of these configured for your business to keep things separate and secure. I have yet to see a home Wi-Fi router that has this capability to set up VLANs. There might be a few models out there that do offer that feature, but for the most part, they don't. A quick example might be having two VLANs, one for your office computers and your office printers and other office devices, and then also having a guest network for whenever you have people coming into the office that need access to the internet, but shouldn't have access to your internal network. Another great example is if you process credit cards or you have point of sale systems. In order to be PCI compliant and continue to take credit cards, you are supposed to have all of your point of sale systems and your credit card readers on a separate network from the rest of your devices. Instead of investing in a bunch of equipment to separate those two physically, it's really easy to do that with a VLAN. Another major difference in configurability is these Wi-Fi home routers will usually allow you to broadcast two Wi-Fi networks. One main one for your general everyday use, and then a guest one that you can have a little bit of isolation and allow other people to use your internet without seeing your internal devices. The business class setup with these access points can allow you to broadcast many different Wi-Fi networks if you need that capability. For example, this is just a few devices out of many that we're going to be installing in a hotel soon. This hotel it has multiple floors, so it's going to have multiple network racks with many different switches and lots of access points. They're going to be broadcasting 3 main Wi-Fi networks, one for staff to connect their staff computers and devices to, another one for guests, so that guests staying at the hotel can connect their phones, laptops, tablets, whatever, to access the internet, and a third one for their restaurant, for their point of sale system that they use specifically in the restaurant to help keep them PCI compliant. Another major difference in configurability is the network switch on these home routers are what's considered a layer 2 network switch. And without getting into a bunch of jargon and deep technical networking knowledge, that basically means this is a dumb switch. It's basically a network splitter in a way. This switch down here, however, is what's considered a multi-layer switch, or some people call it a layer 3 switch. And each one of these ports is addressable in the management console. So if you're having problems with one particular port, some device connected to one particular port, you can go in there and just turn off access to that port, or throttle that port, or move that port onto another VLAN. This is also a PoE switch, or power over Ethernet, which allows us to power network devices without having a separate power source. So things like these access points, we can run one cable to that provides power and data. These access points don't require a separate power cord to be plugged into the wall. It all goes over one cable. And with this multi-layer switch, we can go in there in the management console, and since each of these ports are addressable, we can power cycle an access point if it needs to be rebooted without actually going over to the access point, climbing a ladder, and unplugging it. Now, there are such things as business class layer 2 switches or dumb switches, kind of like what's in this device. And they do go in a rack. And there are certain situations where you would use a switch like that in a business environment. But as far as I know, there aren't any consumer class switches that have the capabilities I just outlined. And as I've already mentioned briefly, this is way more scalable than this. You can add more wireless access points to expand your Wi-Fi coverage and capability, whereas you can't with this. You can add more network switches or more routers depending on your configuration, whereas you can't really with this without some really janky setups. Another quick thing to mention is most of this stuff is rack mountable, which makes organizing your cables and your equipment really, really easy. Now let's talk about cost. Of course, this equipment costs more than this equipment. This home Wi-Fi router is a pretty high-end one, and it's old now, but when it came out, it was about $300. However, you can buy home Wi-Fi routers for under $100 many places. This setup over here, just this wireless access point was $200 by itself. And all this equipment sitting here is a little over $1,000. So you might be thinking, well, I have a small business. I only have maybe about 10 employees. We maybe have 15 devices that have to be on our network. We're never going to push a Wi-Fi router like this to capacity, so might as well save the money to buy something like this rather than a setup like this. And that does make sense on the surface. However, this setup that I have right here, again, is for a hotel. So this equipment is meant to handle hundreds of devices at once. You can get business class hardware that is not as capable, more capable than this, but not as capable as this specific hardware I have here for much less. You can get brand new access points for around $100 each. You can get brand new business class routers that are smaller and less powerful than this one for between $50 and $100. And you can get a network switch, a business class network switch, depending on how many ports you want, that is, anywhere from $100 to $200. So you can get a full business class setup, brand new hardware, for a similar price that you could buy this high-end home Wi-Fi router, but get all of the benefits of the business class equipment. The other thing too is, remember, maybe your business is pretty small right now and you only have 10 employees and 15 devices, but if you plan on expanding in the future, or if you are currently expanding, this type of hardware will allow you to expand with your business. You'll never outgrow this as long as you keep up with it. Whereas something like this, you could easily outgrow, and then pretty soon it's not just adding another access point or another switch or one or two other components. It is completely rebuilding and replacing your entire network infrastructure. Now, at the beginning of the video, I teased that there is one consumer-grade networking piece of hardware that I would actually recommend for businesses. Let me show you. This is a desktop networking switch, and you can buy this at basically any big box store. You can buy them at Walmart, Best Buy, and many other places. This is a consumer grade network switch. This is something that if you wanted to expand the amount of hardwired ports in your home, you could pair this switch with this router and basically multiply the ports on the back of the router. This is a layer 2 switch, or a dumb switch, and it does actually have an application in business. Now, in a perfect world, you will have built your office building with plenty of network drops where you're going to have your different devices plugged in, and you wouldn't need something like this. You will have enough network jacks on the wall going back to your main networking rack to supply all of your hardwired devices with a hardwired connection. Unfortunately, we don't live in a perfect world, and oftentimes office buildings are either built without that in mind, or they're inherited back when you didn't have as many things you needed to plug into the network. So you might not have as many network drops available as you have devices. A small desktop networking switch like this can be deployed under somebody's desk to multiply their network port. Let's say they have one network jack on the wall, but they have a desktop computer, a VoIP phone, and a network connected printer that all need hardwired connections. This is that solution. These are relatively inexpensive. This 8-port one, I think, was $30 new, so very cheap. Again, it's not the ideal thing, but this is one consumer grade networking product I would recommend for specific situations. Now, in a future video, we're going to bring you along with us as we install this hardware at a hotel. This is going to increase productivity for their staff and limit outages and increase satisfaction for their customers who are staying at the hotel. So make sure you keep an eye out for that video for when it releases so you can see how this equipment is deployed in the real world. And if you're struggling in your business to figure out what kind of network hardware to buy or how to configure it properly so that you can stay productive and secure in your business, or if you're having network problems that you're having trouble tracking down, there will be a link below this video in the description where you can schedule a free 30-minute consultation with us, and we can go over any sort of networking things that you want for your business and try to get you on the right track. And again, it is 100% free. Thanks for watching this video on business networking equipment. Hopefully you got some good information from this video that you can apply for your business network. And if you're looking for some more tech business advice and info, there'll be a couple other videos on screen here that you can click on, one of which will be going over the difference between consumer class and business class computers and why you should stay away from the computers that are on sale at Costco. Thanks, and we'll see you in the next one.